for our lateness. Of course, we had another session, a combined council meeting with our CSEC, which was really pretty interesting, and so I apologize for us being late. Call to order with a Pledge of Allegiance. Would one of take that roll? Okay. Thank you. States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. May I have roll call, please?
Councilmember Henley? Here. Vice Mayor Harrington? Here. Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Here.
Mayor Agramonte?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We were not in a closed session, so there's no reporting out. And I'd like to know if anyone has any changes to the agenda. And if not, then could I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
May I have roll call?
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Presentation. So may I do the presentation and then read the public, or should I have to stick with that? Comments for the public?
We should do, since the council just approved the order of the agenda, we should do
All right.
comments from public first before we
Okay.
do.
At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less under state law unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph M. Brown Act. The merits of the matters presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the City Council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for council consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the mayor, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name. Would anyone? I'm opening this up for public comments. Oh my gosh. All right. So I'm closing public comments. Are there any meeting dedications this evening? None? So on to my first presentation is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2018. Madeline?
Yes, Madeline.
I know, it's so exciting to say that. Of course, I spelled my name wrong. You get credit for having it the right way.
Sweet. Now mine is different too. Oh. Yeah.
What was wrong with our parents? So this is City of Sonoma Proclamation Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2018. Whereas the City of Sonoma affects the community and that the crime of domestic violence based on the systematic Sonoma County is a community-based, not-for-profit YWCA USA, and advocate for domestic. Sonoma County operates our community's only confidential safe house shelter, the only 24/7 domestic violence crisis hotline, and the only therapeutic preschool serving one of our most vulnerable populations, children ages 3 to 5 years old. And whereas domestic violence is a serious crime that affects people of all races, sexes, ages, sexual orientation, and income levels. Stopping the cycle of vicious criminal assault in the home requires a coordinated effort between the criminal justice system and the agencies that provide services to victims, primarily reliant on the strong resolve and immense courage of survivors. And whereas only in an informed community effort will put an end to the cycle of domestic violence. Members of our community are encouraged to participate in YWCA's scheduled events and programs to support their mission to eliminate domestic violence in Sonoma County through awareness, education, and empowerment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Madeline Agramonte, Mayor of the City of Sonoma, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2018 in Sonoma as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In witness whereof, I hereby set my and cause the seal my name and cause the seal of the City of Sonoma to be affixed this 22nd day of October 2018. And today, of course, the Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2018. Thank you, Madeline. This is for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Would you like to share something?
I would. Thank you so much.
This is great. Thank you, Madeline. My goodness.
We have a room full of Madeleines.
Yes, we do. I'm rarely in the company of more Madelines, but I'm feeling very much at home. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, on behalf of the Board of Directors, the staff, the volunteers, and certainly the clients served by YWCA Sonoma County, we are sincerely grateful for your proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Now, you know, it was just about a year ago that we all dealt with dramatic wildfires, and there was a lot of devastating loss for each of us. We experienced something that many of us have not experienced, and that was evacuation. And I paused on that word evacuation because I want you to know that for many of us who had to leave our homes and leave belongings behind, we were fleeing an unknown threat, weren't we? There was a really sincere, heightened sense of anxiety because we didn't know whether the fires were being contained and we didn't know when they were going to flare up, right? And so in many ways, I just want to remind everyone, with all due respect to fire victims, that evacuation is something that families dealing with domestic violence see not as an isolated incident in the course of their history, but it becomes a way of life. So many times they do need to flee their homes and leave behind belongings, certainly their lives, because they fear for the fact that they have violence in their homes. And that's where YWCA Sonoma County comes in. As you stated, we do operate the county's only shelter for families fleeing violence in their home. We run the crisis hotline, and we have a preschool for at-risk kids. We encompass every inch of Sonoma County, and that is no small feat because we're quite a large community. We've been around since 1975, and we're going to be here for you in Sonoma until you don't need us anymore. Part of the proclamation suggests that you support us in some of our events, so I just want to turn your attention to a colorful flyer that I've shared with you. It's our calendar of events. You can see we've had a very busy October. And later this week, I just want to call your attention to a film that we're going to be presenting in East Santa Rosa at the Summerfield Theater. It's called Domestic Violence, Power and Control. It's about the history of domestic violence in America, and it will be a very important learning opportunity for our community. I'm so grateful today to be among so many like-minded community members, the Soroptimists, for example, with their proclamation, and so many of your kind citizens who have allowed me to share my message. But I'm especially touched that Shauna Davis is here with Epicurean Connection. She is a longtime supporter of YWCA Sonoma County, and she's hosting an event that you could all come to on November, I got to get the date right, 4th, just a couple weeks away at Ramekins. This is a really important, it's our third year, right, Shauna? This is a really important event. We encourage people to bring gift cards and gently used coats because at this time of year, particularly, the families in our care need things like that. So join us at Ramekins. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for the City Council and your staff. It's October. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Wait for it to warm up. Thank you so much. Would you like a picture?
Yes,
of us and
absolutely.
the
Please.
certificate, Shauna? I saw you looked like a pro.
I think Shauna should be in the picture.
I know.
Nice.
Put her between the mouths.
Oh, yeah. I gotta be the peanut butter again.
There you go.
She's between the mouths. Oh, what am I doing? Thank you.
And Lori has volunteered 2 of our 3.
Oh, wonderful. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you so much. So I would like to call up all of our Seroptimists. Yes, absolutely. Are you kidding? Where, wherever you'd like, wherever you would like something that'll be a great picture. Of course, the Seroptimists and the Women's Club served at the pancake breakfast on Saturday, which was wonderful, and it was a great affair, and we were great groups to be able to help continuously on that event. City of Sonoma proclamation recognizing human trafficking prevention. Whereas the United States was founded upon the principle that all people are created with the unalienable right of freedom, and added the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, making slavery illegal. And whereas slavery within the United States today is most often found in the form of human trafficking, which weakens our social fabric, increases violence in organized crime, and debases our humanity. And whereas it is estimated that more than 20 million men, women, and children around the world are victims of human trafficking, and whereas Seroptimist International of Sonoma Valley is working to abolish all forms of human trafficking through education, volunteerism, advocacy, and collaboration. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Madeline Agramonte, Mayor of the City of Sonoma, do hereby call upon the citizens of Sonoma to recognize the vital role we can play in ending all forms of slavery, and to support the Seroptimist International of Sonoma Valley as they raise awareness through education and other efforts to stop human trafficking. In witness whereof, I hereby set my seal and my name and cause the seal of the City of Sonoma to be affixed this 22nd day of October 2018. Madeline Agramonte, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to know who would like to speak for your group.
Hi. I'm going to let Lillian Myers, because she's been one of the foremost members in this effort. Oh, okay, let's get over here. Lillian has been one of the strongest advocates against human trafficking in our club. Not that we aren't all strong advocates of this, but she really has made a major push in this club, and I think she needs to speak to this. You have your little microphone there, dear. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for proclaiming this and putting this up front for people to be aware that it's all over. It's not, we're not safe either. Just want you to know something that came about as I was educated into this event. The people that human traffic, if you stop and think about a clicker, if I give you that clicker, I have to go out and buy a new clicker. However, with a human being, you don't have to do that. You give me that human being back, and I get to use that human being several times. And that was really a big thing for me to realize that this isn't a clicker we're giving away. This is a human being. And they're used over and over again. And once they're used, and if they're not used sexually anymore, they're putting into labor. And they can never leave. It's very, very hard thing to do. So they really do need help, and we're very grateful for Verdi to help us do that. That's an organization in Santa Rosa that helps people get out of this particular situation that they're in. And I want to thank my Seroptimist sisters, as well as you, the City Council, and Mayor Madeline. I really appreciate this. This is so important. And thank you.
We're going to take a picture.
Does the council want to come, or do you want to?
One, two, three. Okay.
Oh, sure, absolutely. We're going to go, thank you all. And I'd like to go back to dedications. Vice Mayor Harrington has a dedication.
I want to dedicate our meeting to Jake Payne. He's a Sonoma teenager, and he was just killed in a Napa car accident. He's a 2016 graduate of Sonoma Valley High School, and also he attended Altamira, and I'm sorry for his family that happened. And that's it, Jake.
What, I'm sorry, his last name is P?
Paine, Jacob Patrick Payne.
Eek. Thank you. Okay, let's, so I'm now at the consent agenda. Yeah, thank you.
All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, the council may decide to change the order of the agenda.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone from the council want to change the agenda? Good. Like to take it out to the public? Is there anything you see on this agenda you would like to change? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to this.
4.1 and 4.2 of the consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
If you're ready. Yep. Moving into the public hearing 5.1, conduct a public hearing to discuss, consider, and take possible action on extending a temporary moratorium on all commercial cannabis activities except medicinal deliveries and approving a report on the conditions leading to the adoption of the ordinance and finding this action to be exempt from environmental review under CEQA guidelines sections 15061B3, 15301, and 15304, among others.
I'd like to turn this over to the city manager.
I'll briefly open, then turn it to our city attorney. So as council knows, over the last year, we have done a lot of work on cannabis, exploring in town halls and having different council conversations on it. As council is aware, you have now approved a personal use cannabis, and those permanent ordinances have been moved through. Staff had direction to bring back an ordinance to prohibit any commercial use of cannabis. And based on timing, we are recommending you extend this urgency ordinance, and then we will be bringing back the permanent ordinance within the next couple, probably 30 to 60 days. So with that, I'd like to turn it to the city attorney. Sorry if there's anything else he would like to add to this.
The current ordinance that's in effect, the moratorium that prohibits cannabis commercial activities except for out-of-city deliveries into the city of medicinal cannabis, will expire on November 5. The upcoming election's on November 6. You have the power to extend this ordinance one more time up to a year. I've been talking with Kathy before the meeting, and she says that she's prepared to bring back the permanent ordinance that the council, majority of the council has thus far indicated is desired, and that would be to ban commercial activities except for deliveries of medicinal cannabis from outside of city businesses within the next 3 to 5 weeks. If this ordinance is not adopted by a 4/5 vote, then on November 5, there will be no rules in the city of Sonoma governing commercial cannabis operations. This will create some uncertainty and confusion. It may provide an opportunity, though, to those who believe that they have been operating, for example, a legal medicinal cannabis business since the adoption of the Compassionate Use Act in 1996, to push their cause before the Commercial Cannabis Bureau in Sacramento. to see if there's a way to get a permit, a license to operate within the city. I think that in my opinion, it's important to extend this moratorium for two principal reasons. One, to eliminate that confusion and concern that there may be those who, in the gap between the expiration of the existing moratorium and whenever the city is able to, or the city council is able to adopt a new permanent ordinance, that there will be those who pursue their own personal agendas before the state of California. Number two, this council is going to change by at least one member on November 6th. And that council, if faced with confusion, pending applications that are before the state of California, will be put in a difficult situation to try to unravel something that didn't need to be all bunched up. Because by adopting this interim ordinance, you basically freeze things in place, allowing not only this council but the next one to give further consideration to the appropriate level of commercial cannabis that might be allowable in the city of Sonoma. So at least our office, and I think the city manager, is recommending that the council adopt this additional moratorium. It's the last time you can do this. I don't think, if there's a concern on the council that we're going to dilly-dally for another year, you certainly have the power to extend the moratorium for less than 12 months, and there might be a shorter period of time that would be acceptable to at least four of you on the dais at this time. I'm open to any questions if you'd like to ask them.
Are there any questions from the city council for our city attorney? None? I'm going to take it out for public comment.
Jack Wagner, 270 West Napa Street. I brought my copy of Councilmember Hunley's draft ordinance. This is a good ordinance. This is what we should be talking about right now. And hopefully when this comes back to being a permanent ordinance, this is what the basis of that will be. I would like to appeal maybe to the people that are on the fence or could be reasoned with that this is pro-business. This is local business. This is pro-agriculture. This is something that visitors and locals can benefit from. And this is just a good way forward. This will prevent dealing with this for another year or two. So yeah, I would like to see something like this going on. If I am a candidate for city council, so if I do fill Councilmember Edwards' seat, I would support moving forward on this. And I'd hope that we could somehow get a 5-0, 4-0 vote, 4-1, 4-0. I would like no one to oppose it. So yeah, 0. But yes, thank you guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak from the public? Seeing no one rise and proceed to the podium, I will close the public session. Comments?
Mayor Agramonte, just one other piece I guess I'd like to make is to be clear, again, the timing of this, again, because we don't know who the new council will be. But if a new council is elected and there's a shift in direction, there will take time to put in regulations of how and what it would look like if a future council would want to have medicinal dispensaries or want to have any commercial. And it would be important to have those regulations in place. So I think that's part of the reason, regardless of what council is sitting up in front of us that we're taking direction from, we believe it's important to continue the urgency ordinance in order to prohibit it this time. And then we'll move forward with the permanent, but then we'll wait and see. Again, councils can change and policy direction can change. So with that, I'll happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? None? Let's see. Thank you. So council discussion regarding this. I think, can I just go ahead? I'll say something. I've been in contact with Tim Regard, the cannabis program manager. I thought it was really important to speak to him because I've heard a lot of conflicting opinions about this issue, and people are really interested, especially people who are older, in for health needs, medical needs that they have in tinctures and oils. And I've been contacted about that with respect to free delivery. So I did, Tim gave me a list of dispensaries in Sonoma County, but he doesn't know if they do have free delivery of these items. And but I just wanted to let you know those items are there for you. The companies are there for you to look at. I think it's really important what I've heard from people regarding this issue. My thoughts on the dispensary still seem to be the same. However, I have spoken to an awful lot of people who have a need, and the need is different medical issues that they have, and they are looking to have different products that help them. And some feel that they aren't able to drive to Santa Rosa or to any of the other places, so they're actually trying to find out about free delivery. So my mind is not closed, you know, as some people have thought, to these issues. But so the list is out there. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them, but Tim Ricard said he would continue to look. And that's what I wanted to say before we begin. Yeah.
Okay, well, I won't belabor it because we've talked about it a million times, but obviously I support having a dispensary in town. I think we should have reasonable regulations like most other cities have figured out to do. I think we're behind on this one, and we should go forward. So, but I don't support letting this moratorium expire and then having no regulations. So I sort of begrudgingly will have to support this, but I don't support an extension beyond 6 months. And I think the longer this drags on, even if a new council is elected, a different majority comes to be and they want to change it, this has to end and we have to have some final decisions, and I don't want to drag it out for a year. So I would only support a 6-month extension, and even that, I don't support the moratorium. I don't support a ban on commercial cannabis at all, but if there has to be one, it should be not very long.
Councilmember Hundley.
Yeah, I'm confused because we currently don't have a majority of a council who would like to act on commercial cannabis, but yet we're still in the territory of having a moratorium, which of course requires 4 out of 5 votes, whereas if this was a permanent ordinance, it would be 3 out of 5 votes. And one of the comments by our city attorney was that allowing this to expire would create uncertainty and confusion in the area of commercial cannabis, but I think that having a moratorium that never ends also creates confusion and uncertainty in this area. So I feel like the council has been backed into a corner on this issue, and I appreciate Vice Mayor Harrington taking one from the team to support it, because I will not be supporting this moratorium, and I think that the time for action has long passed on this subject.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonoma extending a temporary moratorium on all commercial cannabis activities except for municipal deliveries, and approving a report on the conditions leading to the adoption of the ordinance.
For what period?
For 6 months.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Councilmember Hundley?
No.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Thank
Motion
you.
passes.
4-1. If you're ready, Madam Mayor, we move into 6.1. Consider and possibly take action regarding First Amendment to lease and sublease of the Sebastiani Theater, extending by 1 year dates by when city has right to terminate the lease or sublease, and by when to make ADA improvements.
Great, Madam Mayor, I'll open and then turn to our city attorney to finish the presentation. So before you, we are talking about our lease for the Sebastiani Theater. This has been, there's been a partnership where the city has been leasing that since 1986 and underwriting and supporting our iconic theater in downtown. The current lease commenced in December 2016 and is a 25-year term. And then again, we sublease with the Sebastiani Theater Foundation, which provides 50% of the kind of the base rate, and we share in that cost. And it's been a good partnership. Within the terms of the lease, there are some ADA requirements, and I'll allow the city attorney who negotiated those to outline the specifics of the lease. But a few items: the foundation, as we've been working on this issue, has been submitted a letter that provides you an update of their status. They've been actively raising money to renovate the theater, and as they've done some of the research, have determined that rather than just doing some basic upgrades and renovation and dealing with the ADA improvements, there's also the desire to do an expansion, to add a second screen in the back, as they've looked at best practices from other single-screen theaters in downtown. And so they have engaged Michael Ross with Ross Drulis Architects, and I believe they're going to give you a brief presentation. And so with this, the action is to do a First Amendment, and so I'll let the city attorney articulate the specifics of that.
Just briefly, 2 years ago, the council approved a 25-year lease with Mr. Seranian, who's the principal involved in the LLC that owns the Sebastiani Theater. A 25-year lease with an option to extend it an additional 25 years. Within 2 years of December 2016, the city and the foundation were required to determine whether they had raised enough money to do the ADA and other improvements, and if not, they would then at that time have the right to terminate the lease with no additional obligations flowing to the city or to the foundation. The foundation has been working diligently to raise funds, but they believe they need more time. And they've asked for one additional year to raise the funds or be confident that they have the funds committed to do the kind of improvements they want to do. The scope of the work they want to do has far exceeded the original plan envisioned by the parties. And I don't mean to say that in a derogatory way. It's actually spectacular. But it's a Mercedes, it's not a Volkswagen, and Mercedes cost a lot more than Volkswagens, and we were talking about a Volkswagen 2 years ago. I've talked with David Seranian. He's agreeable to the one-year extension to assist in developing additional fundraising. We've also asked that the period of time within which to do the improvements be extended an additional 1 year too, and he's agreeable to that. So the lease amendment that's before you has been agreed to by the foundation's representatives as well as Mr. Seranian, and we recommend the council approve it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the council? None? Then we'll take it up to public. If you would introduce yourself and your address.
I'm Jocelyn Vick. Can you hear me okay? I'm at 17858 Carriger Road. I'm the president of the Sebastiani Theater Foundation, and I first want to just say thank you to all of you, the mayor, the council, and the staff for working with us all the time, decades worth of work to keep this theater going and keep it a vital part of our community and the surrounding area. We are committed to keeping it open. We want to make it the best it can be, sustainable, self-sustainable, so that we aren't another hand out for funds in the community. And we feel, after a feasibility study and really examining this fully, that our grand plan, our Mercedes, if you will, is really a great way to go, and that we will be able to reach our goal of keeping this really iconic theater open and exciting for all of us. I have with me tonight Michael Ross, who's going to give you a presentation on where we stand now. And I just want you to know that we are fully committed to making this work, to fundraise. And we kind of stopped our fundraising because we had this change of plan. And so Michael will explain that to you, and I think you'll agree that it's pretty exciting. So thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michael Ross, principal at Ross Drulis Kusenberry Architecture, and with your permission, I'd like to present this brief presentation about the Sebastiani Theater.
As Michael tees that up, Council, this may be a little more than I don't know how long, it may take a little more than 3 minutes if that's okay with the pleasure of the Council.
We're fine, I'm fine.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I want to thank the City of Sonoma for being a partner in this effort, and also to the Sebastiani Theater Foundation and all of their members for the work that they do, because this has been going on for years, and this is going to become one of the more visible benefits of their efforts, and so I'm pleased to be part of it. So what I like best about going to the Sebastiani Theater is that when you cross the threshold, you cross the threshold of time. And the theater was built in 1934. You get to change your point of view. There's like an emotional change. You get to go into this wonderful historic space. But time hasn't been friendly to the Sebastiani Theater. It's been friendly to the programs that are there, and the movies, and the live performances, and the magic that happens at the Sebastiani Theater. But it hasn't been friendly to code compliance, building systems, and how the entertainment industry works today, and the pressures that are placed on a theater like this that only has a single screen. But the thing that, I'll be a little bit sentimental here, that really means a lot to me, and I believe it means a lot to this community, is something that you can't really fundraise for, but you can really appreciate, something that you can't buy, but you can really appreciate, and that's the creative spark that comes out of this theater for everybody in our town. And I know 4 people in particular. Their first names are Dylan, Athen, Marin, and Cayenne. These are young people who went through the Rotens, either at Ropes Course, Witchy Poo, theater arts, innumerable programs that were sponsored by the Rotens here. And they've gone on to work in human services, behavioral health, the arts, and many, many things. And they got their start on the stage of the Sebastiani Theater. Well, more of that is going to come, because we would like to improve the Sebastiani Theater for another 50 years of providing that creative spark, and another 50 years of entertainment for our community, and another 50 years of historic relevance, and really being one of the sort of beating hearts of our plaza. So what we're proposing to do is to restore, preserve, renovate, and expand the theater. And this includes a fairly heavy shopping list. It includes 21 accessibility and barrier removal upgrades, adding approximately 8,000 square feet of new building area. I'll explain where. Adding an additional screening room, backstage improvements and building systems, and importantly, enhancing the guest experience, and I'll speak to that, and providing things like comfortable seating, wine bar, food offerings, and making it a more enjoyable place to be. This is the proposed site plan. What you're looking at is the Sebastiani Theater from the air. The white portion of the roof plan that you're looking down on is the existing theater itself. The green portion is the north and east sides that we would add space to. The existing floor plan is at the top of the image, and the proposed floor plan is at the bottom of the image. And what we're proposing to do is create a very slender rind of new space that's in an alley that you rarely visit, that's just to the north side of the theater. And in that space would be new accessible restrooms, new support space, elevator, a grand stairway up to a second floor with a beautiful skylight over the top, bring light down into the middle of the space, and other support features. This new space would be in partnership with the preservation and restoration of the historic lobby. So when you walk in, the lobby would be refurbished. The restrooms as we know them today would be refurbished, but they wouldn't become accessible. The existing restrooms would become a period piece about what it would be like to go to the theater in 1934. The new restrooms would be, which would be code compliant, would be to the north in this new corridor system. The existing second floor, its balcony would be refurbished, and so we could reoccupy it. Imagine going to the balcony, and right now you can't occupy it because of fire code issues and exiting, and we would correct that. And then the northern new space, you would go up a stairway, and then you would enter a new pre-function area, and there would be a prep kitchen that would provide for food service at the theater, and also a new state-of-the-art 60-seat screening room. The new 60-seat screening room would be perched on top of a improved green room and backstage area, which would be on the ground floor. Diagrammatically, it would look like this. You're seeing a cutaway into the theater looking from the north towards the south. The spaces that are colored gold represents the areas that would have substantial improvements or additions to the theater. That's the new screening room, the balcony improvements, the green room, and then the areas that are more historically relevant or part of the character-defining features of the theater, like the theater itself, the lobby, the restrooms, and those spaces, they would be preserved, restored, and made more guest-friendly. This is another cutaway looking at the new screening room and the green room at the rear. You can see that this new addition would sort of embrace the old theater in areas that we don't believe are character-defining features of the building. We've engaged Page and Turnbull, historic resource consultants, to prepare a historic resource evaluation, which will help us guide this design process, and that is underway now. And concluding, the next steps, we are respectfully requesting your extension of the lease. We are going to enter into a two-phase ADA barrier removal process and implementation. Part of the ADA requirements are going to be addressed this year while the fundraising goes on. We will, once the fundraising is concluded, we will finalize the facility improvement plan. We'll engage with the city agencies, public hearings, and get all necessary use permits and approvals, then do the construction documents, build the project, and then the legacy continues. So I want to thank you very much for this. This is a sort of a snapshot of the ambitions of this project, and I really believe that this would be a wonderful benefit to not only the theater but our town. Thank you. I'm available for questions should you have them.
Well, that was loud. It looks cool. I guess I'm just wondering about the planning process, because we've had so many projects take years. That can the planning review be done and the project, whatever amount needs to be completed within the next year? Is this enough time? with having to go through planning. And we have our new planning director here, which we haven't introduced him yet. Have we? No, I don't think we did. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, should we do it now? You want to?
So David Storr can stand up in the back. David's our new planning director. Comes to us with almost 30 years of experience in both private consulting, but also extensive public director experience, both in Folsom and then as the planning director and the assistant city manager in Elk Grove, and had a good 10 years, 15 years experience of climbing that planning ladder ahead of time. David also comes with some historical expertise and background. Folsom is a city that appreciates its history and historic downtown, and he sat on their historical association. So it is a personal, I think passion is a way to describe it of his, and I think that's a really nice fit for who we are as a community. So I would like to formally welcome Mr. David Storr.
Welcome, David. So I believe we're still in the public comments stage.
I had that question. So the question was, since you've been introduced now, is do we think that this can be heard by the Planning Commission? I assume there's some amount of environmental review with regard to the historic preservation aspect. So like getting the report and stuff. What is the timing for moving through the city process in your mind?
Well, I think and great question. What we would do is engage in a series of community outreach meetings that would be happening over the next few months to discuss what we're proposing to do and get more input from the town about this, because it is a change. And the historic resource evaluation will be very specific about the requirements of doing anything to this building, and we want to make sure that they assess our plans and agree with the approach. Once we have that, at that point we will prepare use permit drawings and submit an application, which will also include design review. And once we achieve those approvals, and I'm hopeful that we will, this is a much loved project, then we will do the construction drawings and building permits and things like that. So what are the challenges on a project like this?
So it's like 2 months of public outreach, then you're going to do the drawings after that?
Then use permit application. At that time, we'll have the HRE, which would support the use permit application.
Okay.
And after that, we would come for public hearings and
I guess that's a city question then. So once they turn in their use permit application, how quickly would it be heard by the planning commission or design review?
I think it always depends on how complete the application is, but Mr. Ross is honestly, and that is a true statement, but Mr. Ross has done a lot of this with public facilities and facilities in the city, so that's a nice thing. I'm not sure we can give you a specific, but clearly this is a project that we're frankly a co-partner on, so our desire to move this forward, the sooner we can get the project moved forward, the sooner we can get the ADA improvements. Right. So yeah, it would be something that we would be putting high on the list and getting it scheduled for Planning Commission.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? We're still in the public comments place.
Patty DeFern, 465 East MacArthur Street. I thought the cannabis thing was going to take a lot longer than it did. I congratulate you on that, but it took me kind of by surprise. So I'm not sure about my thoughts. I had two major thoughts that have been going over in my mind. The first one was about the 1-year lease. And I just know how everything else is going in the city, so I had some concerns about that. If there could be some kind of way of ensuring the viability of the lease occurring a second time, that would be great. The other thing is that the community's in the process of taking on several projects. Not only is it the theater, which is my top priority, but also the property on 2nd Street East and Spain Street, trying to acquire that property. So as history when I go back in history, and I've lived here a fair number of years, I remember when the city had the opportunity to do it. So when I looked at the letter that the foundation is taking on such a major portion of this, and whereas the city used to contribute 50% on some things, I think that it might be worth your while to consider having the city take a position somehow or other in this project financially to help ensure that it continues. And I have to confess that I've been in the balcony a number of times. Oh, sorry, Roger, but and it is magical to be up there. And I think that we have to do something that brings in the millennials and the younger population. When I go to the theater, oftentimes it's my friends and me, and I think the 60 seats and the use of the balcony and all the things that they are proposing are really spectacular. And I would like to thank Roger for a moment in my history when one of my sons, who chooses to remain anonymous, flew across the stage in Aladdin as a black spider. And it was truly something that I think changed his life. So thank you for your time. 38 seconds.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, no one rising, I'll bring it back to the City Council. Are there any questions the staff would like to answer, that's something you've heard for the City Council, City Manager? None? Okay, so council, I'm ready for council discussion.
I'm ready to make a motion to extend the lease for a year.
Second.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I will definitely be supporting this, and it seems to me that extending this, excuse me, a year, extending the lease for a year is relatively low risk for the city anyway, because in a year we get to analyze the situation and everyone gets to decide if they want to keep investing and move forward. So it seems like the obvious solution. I do find the timeline to be really optimistic, but you know, maybe when there's a will, there's a way.
Just hope nobody appeals it and we'll be all set.
Yeah. So, and I would like to mention there is a huge financial contribution into this lease. So I think that's something, as sure as the other suggestion is something for us to think about. But I want people to be aware of that financial commitment that we've made with respect to this building. So I've heard a motion and a second. And roll call, please.
Councilmember Hundley?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye, and thanks so much to everybody for doing all that hard work, fundraising, and everything you're doing. We obviously really, really appreciate everything you do.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes, and when I'm done here, I'll be helping you raise funds.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Council member report. Do we have any council members' reports or comments? No. I don't want to speed through this. I don't want us to forget the dedication, so I'll go to you, City Manager. Any comments or announcements?
I do have a few announcements, but maybe what I'd like to do, if it's okay, council, maybe deal with keep my general comments for after 8.1. So 8.1 is a discussion about the update of the quarterly, and then I do have a few general updates, but if we could do 8.1 first.
Right, okay, thank you. And we will do that.
So 8.1 is, this is a discussion and direction on an updated quarterly city council agenda plan for October through December. And if council recalls, on September 17th, we had our quarterly agenda review discussion. And at that meeting, there were a number of items, some of which had been discussed, some of which were new items that came up, and the council wanted to see them programmed. And so I am bringing them back to show, again, what we anticipate coming forward. And so there's a number of items that have been programmed here, both on November 5th for a urgency ordinance for a wireless and telecommunications facility. We've also programmed a quarterly financial update on November 19th, the same meeting, bringing back the Mission Bell farming request from the Blue Wing Adobe Trust. Also on November 19th, we've been approached by Sonoma County Transit about a fare-free program, which would basically be a partnership between us and Sonoma County to have the local bus system be free to riders, with the city and the county splitting the costs of the fares. And it's a fairly modest, frankly minor amount of money to try for 18 months and see what the impact of that is. So we'll bringing that forward on the 19th. On December 3rd, planning on talking about tasting room regulations, and the minimum wage study session also is currently proposed for December 3rd. That study just came out last Thursday or Friday, and the earliest that the proponents of that are available is December 3rd. And then council also wanted to have a conversation about a potential ban on Roundup, and so that has been programmed for December 17th. There were a couple other things where council had conversations about at our September 17th meeting that I don't have programmed in terms of dates yet, but there's work underway. The first is really looking at our urban growth boundary, the economic development strategic plan, and the general plan study. Obviously, with Mr. Storer just starting, he needs to get his feet on the ground and really begin to, and then we'll start looking at some of those long range. So I see that that's probably sometime more of a February, coming back and launching those. And then council also wanted an update within 6 months from September on emergency preparedness and action. So also looking at a January and February update. There are two items that aren't kind of booked yet because we're still kind of putting together some of the specifics. As council knows, you've done a lot of work and a number of work sessions on housing impact fees and the inclusionary ordinance. Our next step is to develop the inclusionary ordinance and the in lieu fees. Those documents need to come back together, and then the housing impact fee. So there's a couple ways that could occur, and this is really a direction from council. One, because there were probably, I think, 4 study sessions that you study those options. This is really your pleasure. Staff, I think we're probably got 95% clarity of what you want there. There's a few questions as we've started to look at drafting the ordinance, but we could put forward what we think is our best recommendation and take those items straight to Planning Commission and then come to you. The other option is to bring you a draft ordinance and the draft fee resolutions. You see them kind of all put together because, again, we've looked at this kind of in pieces, and you see the entire item. You look at it, make sure we've captured your policy direction, and then it would go to Planning Commission and then come back to you. It's really a pleasure of the council of which way you want to go. There is public noticing that we need to occur for both the fees and 20-day notice that has to occur for both Planning Commission and council. So those items, the work is started, but there is a question of how you would like to have those come back. And then council also talked on at the September 17th meeting about having conversation about water moratorium and specifically 8th Street East. And as staff has looked at this, we really see it kind of falls in 2 buckets. One is we have 2, maybe 3 requests that are from individual property owners very close to where the city already provides water service, and where there could be an opportunity, if you wanted to modify your water moratorium parameters, you could potentially allow a few properties to be included. That has occurred, looking at the history, that has occurred because you've had this moratorium in place for, I shouldn't say the number of years, but at least 10, maybe 15 years. It has been quite some time. And there have been periodic times where individuals came forward, made a request, and it's like, well, maybe we do want to look at this, and there were modifications made in the moratorium. So that's kind of, I would argue, kind of doing some minor editing, maybe your moratorium. And then the bigger question of a long-term view of, is the city interested in being a water purveyor to support more of 8th Street East, is a bigger policy issue. That would need to come back in 2019, and we need to really kind of put that together and vet that more. The broader short-term issue on water moratorium, that could probably come together, if not by the end of December, by early January. So I wanted to split those into, really I see those as two types of study sessions. And that's would be how staff would recommend those come forward. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions of council, or if there's anything that you want to look at different timing on.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? David?
Well, I just wanted to comment on the water moratorium. I like the idea of having the two, but I would like to see that scheduled tonight. I would like to see, hopefully we could throw that somewhere, or even on the back of the starting of January, because I think it's very important for public safety, fire safety, because a lot of these individuals that would be looking at this water are thinking more for sprinklers.
Yeah, so one other item that if council wants to, I've programmed, the earliest opportunity is the minimum wage study session. That's December 3rd. That also is going to be there would probably, if the council wants to move forward with that, that is going to be a longer process that you could decide maybe you want to start that in January. So whoever the new council has that, and you're not necessarily starting that during the holiday season. That is purely a preference of the council. It could be ready to do a study session on December 3rd. If that did shift, you could put the moratorium potentially in that slot. Just trying to balance meetings so that you're not here till midnight.
So is there any discussion with in response to what I just heard you say about the December 3rd?
I have comments about it, but we want to do public comment first.
No, I just wanted to ask her the question. The city manager the question. With respect to that December 3rd.
I'm just laying that out as that is another potential way that the council could shift if you wanted. If you wanted to move the minimum wage study to January, you then free up a little bit of time on one of your agendas to potentially deal with the more focused water moratorium question sooner. That's
Yeah,
one
and
way.
Amy?
Well, I don't have a question about it, but I have a comment, but I don't know if the comments are supposed to be for after public comment, so are we gonna have public comment? And
Yeah.
then we can
Okay.
have discussion.
Did you have a question, David? None? Okay, we'll go out for public comment.
Yes, good evening. Mayor Agramonte, commissioners, staff, and members of the public. My name is Terry Shore. I'm the Regional Director for Greenbelt Alliance and also a 30-year resident of Sonoma Valley, 515 Hopkins Street. And welcome to the new Planning Director, David Storer. Welcome. Yes, I was here on this agenda item because I urge you to move the study session on the urban growth boundary, one of my favorite subjects, as Jeffrey Walter knows, and the general plan update as soon as possible so that you can start moving on it. And I will be meeting with the city manager and the planning director to talk about that more in detail. It is a long-standing policy, as you all know, for more than 20 years in the city of Sonoma to keep the urban growth boundary, to contain sprawl and make a more sustainable community, reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and there are a lot of benefits to maintaining it with the existing boundary, and to consider the period of time. It was controversial the first time. It was put on the ballot by the community. In most cities in Sonoma and Marin County and around the Bay Area, the renewals have been very straightforward and non-controversial for the most part. And a number of the cities like Sebastopol and Cotati, Windsor have extended the term of the urban growth boundaries for 25, 30 years, and some city councils have even considered in perpetuity. But I'm understanding that there is interest by various parties in expanding the UGB, looking out at A Street East, which would be a significant change in the way our city looks and on impacts on water and ag land farms, the whole spectrum. So I urge us to get started. Another thing to consider is that the ballot measure will expire in December of 2020, and it's very likely that your general plan and EIR won't be ready by then because that's typically a longer process. So the city will want to consider a parallel process and maybe separate environmental review if need be, to make sure that it gets on the ballot no later than November of 2020 so that we can renew it for another 20, 30, or however many years. The primary in 2020 is in California is in March. So if we wanted to do it then, it would definitely put us into 2019. So I hope you will consider all that, and look forward to participating in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shore. What are we, I think, well, I was looking for somebody else from the public, so I'm going to close the public session.
And maybe I would just respond briefly to Ms. Shores. As council knows, this was an area that you talked about in your September 17th. You are eager to start these conversations. And I know as staff, we are eager too, and looking forward to being able to, with David here, and really starting to think through what this could look like. So I do anticipate that very early in 2019, we're going to be starting to have some of these conversations.
Amy, I'm sorry.
Just one other piece. Sorry, I do want to say just one thing, because I want to clarify. Ms. Shore talked about the UGB and the 8th Street East. Again, it may be an expansion of the UGB. It may not be. It may just be providing some water. So I think those things are not necessarily completely connected. That's part of the conversation I think that still needs to occur. But
Thank you.
It'll be good timing.
And Rachel, did you have a question?
No, I wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Well, my first comment is about this agenda process, because it's kind of new, and I think this is pretty good, coming back with this in front of the public as a way of letting people know what we're working on and having some input. So just broadly speaking, that's good. On the minimum wage study session, and I brought up the minimum wage, so originally, I think it makes more sense, even though I don't really want to delay it, I think it makes more sense to have whoever the new council is hear the study session, knowing that at least that Gary's seat will definitely be held by somebody else. I just think it makes more sense to have whoever's new hear it. If we're going to start a process talking about it, then there would be more than one hearing on it, and I don't want to have the same first hearing twice. And then I agree about the issue of the water moratorium, that we should get that scheduled. And I don't want to, so I would like to see some follow-up on the dates on the unscheduled stuff. But the other thing, which is maybe it's a comment about how we can improve in the future about scheduling things and agendizing things. So the housing impact fee, the fact that this council isn't gonna vote on that is problematic for me, because we put so many hearings into hearing it. I know all the things that are happening with the staff, so it's not meant as a criticism. It's more of a thought of, when we embark on something like this, I think we got to have a tighter timeline with ideas being in place, that if like you sit through multiple study sessions that are extremely complicated and have deep discussions, that the people who are sitting through them are going to vote on those items. And if we got new council members and they wanted to have a rehearing on all of the study sessions, I think we would have to do it, and that would be a tremendous waste of resources. So it is what it is, but forward going, I think as part of our agenda planning, we have to do a better job project managing things so that the votes are not happening like this. But, we're constantly improving, so that is a suggestion for improvement.
Rachel?
Also, on the subject of housing impact fees and the inclusionary ordinance, which I would say is my priority on this list, I would prefer the staff recommendation go to the Planning Commission rather than start with us, go to the Planning Commission and come back. Because then I would actually like to hear their thoughts on your recommendations, and then we can tweak them at the end. And it would just move faster.
David?
Yeah, and I agree on that one, on the housing impact. I would like to see it go to the Planning Commission also. And then the water moratorium study, I would like to see if we can put that into 12.3. And so there's no confusion. We were talking about two different items. I'm not in any way saying that the jurisdiction out there might be part of the city of Sonoma. It's just a discussion about if we end up being purveyors of water to another jurisdiction.
I'm staying out of this discussion.
Well, I have a couple of comments. I agree with what I've heard here from the other council members. With respect to impact fees and inclusionary percentages, I'm kind of interested as whatever body it goes to, that they take a look at what the legislature and board of supervisors are looking at in the future. I think that would be behoove us to be really ahead of them. The other thing is I'm very pleased, of course, we've talked about this Route 32, but it's just the beginning. It's touching on what we want, what I would like, what I'm sure other council members would like. And so that's why I've already begun forming forum groups to actually do what Sebastopol did. And what they did was they wanted to find the best places where the bus could actually be used. If people want to travel certain places, because in Sebastopol they actually have changed routes, which I think is important because people want to go to certain places. I think there was a suggestion also of changing times just to make sure that people will really use the bus. How do we convince them that that's something that's going to be good for them? And that's what I'd like to get, because I want this to be successful. And I know that Sebastopol was just a test program, I think, and it's working very well, as I understand. I don't want us to do this and not do any of that background work and have it fail. So, but I agree, it would be great to discuss. Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, so I'm going to, it'd be great to maybe have a motion because I want some clarity, but here's what I'm hearing, and since other folks didn't disagree, I'm hearing to shift the minimum wage from December 3rd to January. I didn't hear any disagreement on that. I'm also hearing the water moratorium then gets, kind of the more focused water moratorium gets scheduled then on December 3rd. And then I'm hearing the housing impact fee would go to PC first. And again, we'll have kind of staff recommendations for where there's some infill, for lack of a better term. And again, the Route 32, there will be, Mr. Brian Albee will come from Sonoma County Transit, will come and present. And on that one, every city's done a little differently. Sebastopol was the launcher, so they had all this pre-work that was done. The other two cities didn't do the pre-work, they just launched it. But he's willing to do some studies, do things during this process. And so I think that's part of a conversation that he can extrapolate and talk with you more. So those are the three changes that what I hear so far. And again, I'm continuing to believe that the council's interested in getting the conversation on the general plan started in early 2019. So
Make a motion to approve the agenda as just described by the city manager.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Cook?
Aye.
Mayor Agramonte?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
And I just have a few city manager reports, if that's all right, council. So one, our About Town newsletter went out again this week. And so there's some updates in here about the Overlook Trail opening, some background information on Measure S. The Chamber of Commerce is going to be sponsoring a first trick-or-treating in downtown Sonoma from 2 to 5 on the 31st for kids 10 or younger. So that'll be fun, and City Hall will be participating. So if you want to come on by and help us out. The Sonoma Art Walk is also continuing on November 1 and December 7th, and this is the Chamber's kind of beta test on having the first, kind of that first Thursday to explore arts. And then just want to remind folks that there are 2 emergency pieces that are going on. The Sonoma Community Center got a grant to basically register volunteers ahead of time, and so really want to reach out and have folks work with the Sonoma Community Center and get designated as emergency volunteer ahead of time, and appreciate the leadership that they've shown there. And then there is an earthquake retrofit program funding that basically provides a $3,000 reimbursement potentially through a lottery for folks to build a brace and bolt their homes if those homes were constructed before 1979. So there's a piece here, and that's also on our website. And then the last thing that I have as city manager, the mayor and I had a conversation, and we wanted, it was recommended that we wanted to acknowledge Councilmember Hunley's recent wedding. And so we have a small gift. So rather than flowers, Councilmember Hunley, this terrarium was built by Rita Gibson on our staff. And hopefully it's something that you can keep alive. No doubt that your marriage will continue to flourish. But on behalf of the staff, we want to say congratulations, and there's a card there from the council as well. So if any council comments?
Just want to say thank you all very much. You were all here when it started last December, and here we are again today. These are beautiful. Thank you, Rita.
So before we adjourn, I wanted to remind us that Vice Mayor Harrington dedicated our meeting to Jake Patrick Payne. And we did that. And so are there any, you've already done your reports, the city manager? Okay. So this council, is there anyone else who would like to say anything? We are adjourned.